Bueno, buenas tardes.
Well, good evening, and welcome to Casa Árabe. I believe that we have interpretation for our wonderful speaker today. Thank you all for coming. First of all, to Cecilia, who is the Director of Collaboration with the Africa world, the Arab world, and Asia, from the Spanish Agency for Development. Some of the members of the consortium of Casa Árabe here at the city center of Madrid, Agustín Fernández, who is the Director of Area Justice and Rule of Law from FIAP. Welcome to you all. I feel really happy to see so many people here, students, teachers, a lot of people. So we have a full house. It's not that the rest of the days we have no people coming, but I think we have to appreciate this full house. Is very satisfactory, especially because this program that started years ago is definitely very important. It's important because of the relationship that Casa Árabe maintains with the university, with the academia, with the different educational institutions that tackle these type of issues that are very relevant for all of us. And also because the role that Casa Árabe intends to play at this very moment with the good company and collaboration that we have with the Spanish Agency for Cooperation with the Arab world, Masar Abdan, and with the support of FIAP. And so thank you very much to the two representatives of these two agencies, not only to the people who've come here, but the whole teams that are working hand in hand with us to make a success of this seminar. This collaboration comes together with the one that we already have with the 30 university programs of 12 universities from Madrid, Castilla-La Mancha, Córdoba, Granada, Segovia, Sevilla, and Toledo, who participate this year in this conference cycle, and they send us different proposals on speakers and topics around the Arab world in this Aula Árabe Universitaria that comes with a passport. I think they have been stamped in the passport, and I think this is very attractive to all the students. As a piece of news, I would like to highlight the fact that apart from the regular partners in crime, such as Universidad Autónoma Complutense, Carlos III, Rey Juan Carlos, St. Louis University, and so on and so forth, the University of Cordoba, that's very important for us because, as you know, we have another institution in Cordoba, and we have a very close collaboration with the University of Cordoba there. And to that, we're adding this year University of Salamanca, Granada, and the UNED, the one for remote learning. So this is really great to have them joining us this year. The work that we do in collaboration with all of these institutions, it's also linked with the one that we had with the Mediterranean classroom of the EMED. We have a twinning program, we exchange speakers, and we certified our presentations so that all the students that participate in this conference, they can enjoy them online through a streaming program. So we're growing and we're joining forces with the purpose of providing knowledge and dialogue about the Arab countries in general around their multifaceted reality, their sustainable development. And thirdly, it's also a great honor for me to inaugurate this seminar because we have wonderful presentations with high-level experts. Today we have a very important teacher that comes from Doha, although she is Lebanese, and she's an expert in contemporary Arab thinking in the context of the last year mainly, and this is the topic that she is going to be talking today about, is Elisabeth Suzanne Kassab. So I'm not going to spoil her conference. I just want to thank her for her participation, contemporary Arab thinking from the Arab Spring to genocide. That's very important, especially because there are many countries within the G8 acknowledging and recognizing the state of Palestine, but also it's very important because of the punishment, the daily punishment that Gaza is suffering continues. And we'll talk with her later on, and so I don't want to spoil her presentation. As I said before, we just want to give her a very warm welcome. And in the 19 conferences that we're going to have in this seminar, 15 of them will take place in Madrid, 3 will be taking place in Cordoba, and 1 will be taking place in Granada. And during all of them, we'll do kind of like a physical trip. We'll visit different destination aspects and dynamics with regards to the reality of the Arab world today. Today we're going to be talking about contemporary thinking, but we'll also talk about issues such as art, history, international law, climate change, gender and migration, movie industry, poetry, photojournalism, cultural pluralism, trying to have a good connection between the countries in the Gulf area, in Maghreb, so that you have a more global perspective and a more comprehensive perspective. And this Aula Árabe Universitaria is called like that. Aula means classroom in English, mainly because it's aimed at students, but also to the general public. So welcome to you all, and you try to attract other people that you feel can feel interested in this. All the conferences will be covering different aspects and dimensions of the Arab world. As we said before, it's a very multifaceted world, and now we have many questions about what's going on. How the Arab Spring ended, or if it didn't end, and the Arab tsunami, as it was called here, the riots or the conflicts that we've seen afterwards, the reaction of the countries in the Arab world to what's going on right now in Gaza, the economic transition or the environmental transition that might be happening, although some of them are some of the greater producers of fossil fuels, but how they're adapting and how they're trying to change their image in that sense. And that's why it's very important to hear what experts on different areas have to tell us about it, tackling the economic aspects, art, history, thoughts, and this is a classroom, an Arab classroom for university students, and we're here working with several universities that are the most important ones, and this is part of their university program devoted to this area in the world. So we just want to wish you a very nice evening. I hope that you enjoy this conference, and I'm going to give the floor to my collaborators today, the director of Casa Árabe and the director of FIAP, the one that it is working on law and justice. So we give them now the floor. Hope you enjoy the seminar. Well, good evening. Good evening, everybody. It is a great honor for the Spanish Agency for International Cooperation for Development to be here in Casa Árabe, a place for meeting, for knowledge, in order to inaugurate the 7th year of Aula Árabe Universitaria. Our collaboration with Casa Árabe is based on a strategic alliance that's consolidating over time, and it's part of the regional program of our agency, the program Masar Alam, Masar Now for the Mediterranean region. The Arab world is a priority region for a Spanish Cooperation Agency, as we state in our master plan that goes from 2024 to 2027, and the Masar Alam program, our apologies for the mispronunciation, it's a central program trying to participate in the social, ecological, and economic transition What does this mean? What this triple transition mean? Means to support job creation and new opportunity for youngsters, which are the real driver for change in the region. It means also to promote a fair, just environmental transition that can tackle the challenges that will come with climate change and water management in the Mediterranean region. And it also means fundamentally to advance in gender equality as an indispensable pillar for any democratic and prosperous society. This regional program it's extremely comprehensive, multi-stakeholder, multifaceted, with several dimensions, combining different factors and boosting the use of exchange networks and working, consolidating alliances between government, civil society, and the academia, so we can have a greater impact. This seminar that starts today materializes two very important ideas that we've also included in our master plan and in the Maral Salam program. On one hand, the fundamental role of the academia, research centers, and university, acknowledging knowledge as the main tool or one of the main tools for sustainable development, and on the other hand, the relevance that we try to apply always, fostering fast solutions based on innovative knowledge. I just want to finish by saying that we're extremely happy of Aula Árabe Universitaria being part of Masar Alam, and at the same time Masar Alam being part of Aula Árabe. I would also like to thank FIAP for their support as a strategic partner in this trajectory, and I'm totally convinced that today's conference of Professor Kassab is going to be a wonderful starting point for this program, for this seminar, because in the dark times that we're living, deep reflections, calm reflections are an actual need. That will open windows to knowledge and to exchange and mutual understanding, which is fundamental. That's all that I had to say. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Bueno, yo voy a ser muy breve.
I'm going to be extremely brief. I just want to give you a very warm welcome. And from FIAP, the Foundation for the Internalization of Public Administrations, that is part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, EU, and cooperation in Spain. We just want to support public policies and institutions by creating areas for exchange like this one. Aula Árabe Universitaria starts one more year as a trip that we made to the Arab world, supported by experts on the field, like our speaker this evening, and students and the general public can get closer to the Arab world, knowing many different aspects about it. As we will see in the conferences in this seminar, we'll hear about history, art, movie making or movie industry, climate change, sustainability, economy, etc. So congratulations to Casa Árabe for creating this program and for hosting us in this wonderful space. Aula Árabe wants to promote knowledge of the Arab world as well as enriching the education provided by the different universities that are part of the program. This is an ongoing cooperation exercise, university exchange, encouraging dialogue between different disciplines, and gives students, teachers, and researchers the possibility of getting in contact with high-level speakers that are very relevant at international level from the different disciplines that are going to be part of our seminar. Aula Universitaria, as the director of the cooperation agency, The Arab world is a priority region for the Spanish cooperation, and the Masar Alam program wants to strengthen links with our Arab neighbor, support a common development project based on dialogue and coexistence so we can have a better regional integration, trying to give an answer to very complex problems with the use of public policies that are based of knowledge and innovation. So I just don't want to say anything else because who matters here are our speakers. And so let's move on together. Masar Alam, thank you.
Sí. ¿Se me oye bien?
Can you all hear me? Well, good afternoon and welcome everyone again. It is a great pleasure for me to start this new Aula Árabe Universitaria, this new seminar. We start the conference, today's conference about the contemporary Arab thinking going from the Arab Spring to genocide in Gaza, and it's going to be given by Elisabeth Suzanne Kassab, who is a philosophy professor, and she's the director of the philosophy program at the Doha Institute, and we do so together with the teachers of the Islamic Arab Master of Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. As you know, each one of the conferences that we do it in collaboration with one university program, in this case the Master of the Autonomous University that inaugurates its school year today. So welcome to all the master students as well as other students from other universities that are joining us here in the room. Hopefully you will enjoy very much this program. I don't want to take any longer because I think that what matters more is to hear our professor, and to do so, we have Luz Gomez, who has a professorship on Arab and Islamic Studies in the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. So thank you for bringing Elisabeth and for giving us the opportunity of hearing what she has to say. The topic is extremely relevant for all of us. Talking about the contemporary Arab thinking, given the current circumstances, is extremely relevant to all of us. So I think it's a wonderful conference, the ones that we are going to have to inaugurate the Aula and the Master. So thank you very much. We appreciate the suggestion, and thanks to the Master's team for giving us this opportunity. And Elisabeth, thank you very much for being here with us. Well, now it is my turn to thank Casa Árabe. Thank you to the Centro de Estudios Islámicos. Can you hear me now? It was hard to hear her. Her microphone was turned off, but I think it's working now. I'm going to try to fix it. Maybe it was too far down. The microphone was too far down. Well, as I was saying, it is now my turn to thank on behalf of the Arab and Islamic Studies Department of Universidad Autónoma de Madrid and all the team that organized the masters. we celebrate our 15th anniversary in our current master format, and out of these last 15 years, 7 of them we've shared the inauguration with Casa Árabe, and we are very happy and we feel very honored to have with us Elisabeth Suzanne Kassab. Apologies if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, but we're very happy because since the master started, we've paid a special attention to our contemporary Arab thinking. It cannot be any other way because we want to tackle Arab thinking. We have different subjects, and thinking it's a mainstreaming aspect in many other subjects. We have contemporary Arab world, the political Islam, social movements, and we have subjects such as religious pluralism in Europe, and philosophy is a mainstreaming aspect that help us to reach other disciplines, and that it makes us different from other training offers that are available in Spain and also in the region of Madrid. That's why for us it's especially important, it's especially relevant to have Elisabeth Suzanne Kassab with us today, because she's going to contribute to materialize, to give vision to this aspect of our master. Elisabeth Suzanne Kassab is Lebanese, but she's working right now for the Doha Institute, and she's author one book that we use as a reference in for our students. It's part of our references that we give them at the beginning of the school year. Every year we tell them that these books are in the library and that they can read it, and I encourage you to do so. And probably after hearing the conference, please go and take her book and go and read more things that when you will be able to hear here. Because through her books we can read contemporary Arab world, about contemporary Arab world from the voices of the protagonists, the men and the women that for 200 years have been expressing their concerns. So we can read firsthand what are their thoughts, and not through other books that intermediate their words. So read what Arab authors have written in the last 200 years, help you to better understand what's going on. And this is what Dr. Kassab explained in her works that are written in English. I brought my copy, the first edition of one of her books, with several fragments in English that help you to get first-hand access to the way Arab people think right now. And in the case of the work of Suzanne Kassab, we do so considering plurality in Arab thinking and diversity. We hear about diversity. We hear about Marxist artists, Pan-Arabist, Islamist, liberal authors from Maghreb, Masrek, Lebanon, Algiers, Iran, Iraq, born at the end of the 19th century or the early 20th century. That helps you to get a better understanding of the things that we tend to explain in our master course, that maybe we don't convey as good as hearing it firsthand. So now we have here the professor, and we have the possibility of hearing firsthand what she has to say. I don't need to elaborate on this very much because you can find the two big books that are necessary for you to know, and I'm talking about and in this case I'm addressing directly our students, and these are books that are part of our program. One, Contemporary Arab Thought. She said it in English. That was published in 2010, and before summer is being updated. Why this Contemporary Arab Thought is so important? Because it's not a new version, but she's reviewed all the paradigms that she had with regards to Arab thought since the end of 19th century, since the Nakba, until the movements that took place in the 80s and the 90s in light of the Arab Spring. And frequently, where we studied in our master's course Arab societies, it's hard for us to reach these years of the Arab Spring. So thanks to this new edition of this work, we can hear about what's happening more recently, even the genocide. And this is what Dr. Kassab is going to be explaining today. And it's very important, especially when we think about the Gaza genocide, because one of her paradigms, and maybe she can elaborate on this later on, her work, her position as a theorist, studying contemporary Arab thought, she puts together theory and social action. When she is doing theory, she is acting to transform contemporary Arab society. It's not a mere theoretical exercise for the mere sake of being theoretical, but what she intends to do is for Arab societies to take action, to change, to move forward. And in the other book that we also recommend in our master's program that was published, Enlightenment of the Revolution, sorry, I couldn't hear what she said, she study the Enlightenment, the new humanism, the needs for new Arab names prior to the 2010 revolutions. But these are clues to the reflection on how is it possible to make it all the way to the genocide, so that this genocide is not only accepted by Arab countries, definitely not by the Arab people, but yes, by the society, international society. In the what's the failure of enlightened thoughts in the Arab world? And all of these things are part of her work, and I invite you to come here and read these authors that we always mention in class: Nasser al-Sarabusei, Neila Asad, Hassan Hanafi. I'm sorry, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing all of the names, sorry. But these are names that I'm not saying just to brag about the fact that I know about them, but they are in Suzanne's works, and we can read firsthand fragments of her works, and otherwise we will not have access to them. So with this introduction, I'm going to give the floor to Elisabeth Suzanne Kassab, and after her presentation, after her conference that will last approximately 45 minutes, we'll open a Q&A session for debate or suggestions. So thank you very much to you all for coming here, and above all, thanks to our old students, because that shows how our master works. More than 500 students have been trained with us.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here, and I want to thank all the parties and institutions that made this invitation possible, from the Casa Árabe to all these institutions, so thank you very much. Okay, so this book that Luz was showing, what do? I press on just here? No, you have this one. Oh, this one, yes. Yeah, so this is my topic. The book, Luz, that you were showing came out in 2010, a few months before the whole Arab region went into upheavals and revolutions and what have you. I had not suspected at all that any of that would happen. What I had noticed in my research was a deep sense of incapacity, of helplessness, of despair. But I never imagined that this despair would lead to the explosion that it led to. So I will speak a little bit about why I wrote this book, and then how it looks to me 15 years later with the second edition. And in fact, with my editor, we decided to produce a second edition because so much had happened just after this book came out. The Arab revolts, and every time I thought, this is it, now this is the ultimate turning point, and then something bigger would happen, up until the Gaza war. So I'm going to try and give you a little bit a sense of how I have been trying to follow up on these things. So why work on contemporary Arab thought? I think we people in outside privileged Europe have this sense of a hierarchy of thoughts and knowledges, right? That there is somehow knowledge that is worth knowing and knowledge that you can do without. That there are intellectual legacies that are central to the world, basically European, French, German, and Western, certain US legacies. These are important things to know, to learn, that you would be ready to pay fees, university fees, to acquire that knowledge, that you would buy books. But to go and pay money to hear what a contemporary Arab person is thinking, not sure. No, is it worth to know? And in the Arab case, there is this fantastic classical heritage. No? Now, if you're reading Ibn Rushd or Ibn Sina, that's sure value. That is worth studying because it's an established body of knowledge. But contemporary Arab thinkers, not sure. What are they worth? In my case, they are worth because I need to make sense of my world. And it is a very tumultuous world. The Middle East, as you know, is a very eventful place. So for a little girl like me, growing up in Lebanon, I felt that I needed to know how people were making sense of all what was happening to us almost every year and every month. And when I wanted to know, I was trained in Western philosophy. And I never thought for a long period of my life that I would ever be interested in anything local. Until at some point, I felt the need to find instruments of thinking, ideas, ways of making sense. And this is when I started asking, okay, who produces ideas in my part of the world? And I discovered that there was not much written on the topic. So I thought I need to go and gather a body of knowledge or gather some of these works and try to connect them to see what they have analyzed. And I was particularly interested in critical thinking, not so much ideology. I know that in the 80s and 90s, everybody, all researchers working on the Arab world and the Arab region studied Islamism and the resurgence of Islamism or what happened to Arab nationalism. I was not very much interested in that. I wanted to know who was raising critical questions. And so I wrote this book to tell the story of critique in contemporary Arab thought. And one of the dominating themes was cultural malaise, that there was something wrong in the cultural world of this part of the world. Everybody was talking about cultural malaise, especially after 1967. As you know, for a long time, until 2011, 1967 was taken to be the turning point in modern Arab history because of the total defeat of Arab armies against Israel. And that turning point was not only a military event, it was also the beginning of a deep critical self-reflection. So I tried to look a little bit at how this cultural critique was carried out. Now, since I'm in Spain, let me add this remark that what interested me also was to see whether similar discussions were taking place outside the Arab region. Now, most of us who live outside Europe have this one-track conversation with Europe. Everybody, you know, in Africa, in Latin America, maybe in Spain also, everybody is discussing, trying to measure up to Western thought, basically Central European thought. So it was for me a fantastic discovery to see that people like Black Americans, Native Americans, Latin Americans, Africans also raise similar questions. Questions about authenticity, tradition, identity, modernity. And just to give you a very brief conclusion from this comparative observation that I made. In Latin America, the big concern is imitation. That if you're in Mexico or you're in Venezuela, what authentic thought are you producing? You're just imitating what is being produced in Paris and maybe what is being produced in Madrid. But what is original about what you're doing? The language is not your language. The whole tradition of thinking is not yours. So you see Latin American thinkers very preoccupied with this question of imitation. And some of you might be familiar with that big discussion, is there a Latin American philosophy? What would that be? How do you determine it? Can philosophy be specific, particular, or not? The Africans deployed a lot of effort to prove that they can think at all. You know, because of the racist white characterization that Africans are good at dancing or at being one with nature and all kinds of things that Europeans come up with. And so for a long time, there was this effort on the part of the Africans that they do have theoretical thinking, especially that there is no written legacy in Africa. So the challenge is really to prove that, for instance, the whole task of ethnophilosophy was really to prove that even in the proverbs, in the wisdom, in the oral wisdom, that there was some form of theoretical thinking. When we come to the Arabs, Arabs are very comfortable. They say we have this fantastic legacy, classical contributions to world science, mathematics, philosophy, so we're okay. We don't need to prove anything. But then the burden is to explain why you have fallen so much behind. And so come all the attempts at analysis that it's because of, is it because of religion? Is it because of certain cultural characteristics? And then, in the case of the Arab discussions, what I find troubling, really, is that the legacy is, on the one hand, very positive, because it gives you a sense of confidence. But on the other hand, it is also associated with a sense of power, and that fantasy of getting that power back. So it is, for me, I'm always concerned about this undercurrent, or that, let me call it the temptation of a will to power. And I think that it's dangerous because the will to power is never a very empowering or liberating thing. So just a few remarks about how different regions and different communities position themselves with respect to this, to the hegemonic intellectual legacy. Let me add another thing. In this book, the 2010 book, I thought that when one reads this legacy that Luz was mentioning from the 19th century, one sees two lines of analysis to see why the Arab world, after being, quite a world power, would lag behind. And there are two readings, typical two readings that I can detect up until today. There is the culturalist reading, that there is something wrong with your culture, or rather, let me put it more correctly, that the explanations of lagging behind or not lagging behind, of catching up, has something to do with culture. So it's why are you lagging behind? Because there is something wrong with your culture, and then you have to fix this culture. The other reading is the political reading, that the Arab region, different parts of it, depending on who's speaking, when, is lagging behind because of a political problem, namely the absence of constitution, basically the failure to hold power accountable. And from the Tahtawi onwards, so really for about 200 years, we have these two readings competing. When political life is active, then politics is important. And when politics becomes forbidden or challenged, then there is a lot of culture talk. And I was interested in the political one. So it was very interesting for me to sort of detect. For instance, when 1967, the defeat happened, a lot of thinkers said, see, it's because we haven't modernized properly. It's because we're not rational enough. It's because, others would say, it's because we betrayed our tradition. We have, lost our identity. Others, few, and that's what I call the minority report, thought that we were defeated because we had no democracy, that people were prevented from political participation. And it's just very interesting to watch these two lines of analysis sort of compete with one another. Now, this is more or less what I did in the 2010 book. How do I look at that book today? Whoops. This is what I was talking about. This is a work of art by a Syrian painter, Tammam Azzam, which he produced in 2012. And I think it's quite a nice representation that could be read in two ways. Of course, you recognize the idea of the Statue of Liberty, composed of ruins. So how do you read it? Is it liberty in ruins, or it's ruins constituting liberty one day? So, on the one hand, you have the old 2010 edition. In the middle, you have this set of revolts that we witnessed, and then the new edition. So let me tell you now how I look at this earlier edition of mine, or at the way I worked on contemporary Arab thought. I thought today I find it extremely insufficient to write a history of contemporary thought by focusing only on books, on texts. When I look back, I see that I wrote a text about texts. This guy says this guy said that, try to make connections. Okay. It was necessary. It was necessary to know who says what about what. But this is not enough. The other frustrating thing is that this field, the field of contemporary Arab thought, remains quite isolated from other fields. For instance, art history. I think that in the last few years, fantastic work has been produced and is being produced on contemporary art history. And I think that as workers in the field of contemporary thought, we need to pay attention to what is happening in the arts. And I will say more why. Arab cultural studies. Again, there have been productions that are quite interesting. What we call contemporary Arab thought is the thought of whom? Is it in touch with non-official thinkers of popular arts, popular culture? The big absence of social history. Today, I am convinced that we cannot pretend that we have a sense of contemporary thought without looking at the social history of the institutions, the research centers, the personalities who produce this thought, what we call contemporary Arab thought. There are some works being produced, and I think we should definitely pay attention to them. Gender studies. Most of the guys I read were men. And when I'm angry, I say these were 5 or 6 men talking to each other. And even at the time when contemporary feminist Arab thought was produced, contemporary Arab thought, the mainstream, continued as if they didn't exist. And I think today you can't do that anymore. Because gender studies dealt with the most fundamental concepts that contemporary Arab thought claimed it was working on. Identity, authenticity, freedom, modernity, tradition, power, and so on. So it really doesn't work anymore to pretend that all of that is irrelevant. So if you don't pay attention, if you keep on working as if the other fields do not exist, you're in isolation, impoverished, logocentric. You're focused on the blah blah. This one says this, the other says that. I think thought is a bit wider than that. And of course, it's these men that are patriarchal structures to these discourses and institutions that are not put in question. So I'm thinking that if you continue to work as if those other fields do not exist, you remain in these deficiencies. Now, let me give you very quickly some examples of what has been produced. Studies of Arab editings, very informative about how books are produced, how they circulate or not circulate. I think a study, an anthropological study like this one, has a lot to tell us about the contemporary Arab intellectual field. Literary studies, fantastic work is produced in literary studies. For me, somebody working in contemporary Arab thought in the more, hardcore intellectual history, you would ignore literary studies at your own peril. Cultural studies, popular culture, graphic design histories, fantastic work. And as soon as you move into these fields, you find women, you find young people, it's a different population. It's no longer the patriarchs who tell you what thought is. art history that fascinates me personally, the visual arts. Now, gender studies. An example, this is a study of the Lebanese state, the confessional system that we have, in which gender is crucial. And so Maya Mikdashi in this work shows that no understanding of the state in Lebanon is possible without paying attention to the gender dynamics and the gender personal law system. So, I'm thinking that there are two works here, 2003, 2010, mine included, on contemporary Arab thought. 2007, a founding work in the history of art. 2010, cultural studies. So more or less, it's about the same time, and yet, as far as we workers in contemporary thought are concerned, they remain isolated. So I think we need to go for cross-pollination. Why do I think that this is important? I think that if you don't bring into the picture social history, i.e., the historicity of this contemporary Arab thought, you think that you put 4 Arabs together and you get the Arab thought that you get. That's not true. It depended. It so happened that you had financial factors, political factors, institutional elements that played a role in producing what we call contemporary Arab thought. So the historicity has to be taken into account, otherwise we fall into an essentialist understanding. So we have to take away the naturalness of this contemporary Arab thought. And for my own purposes, I think if we look at these neighboring disciplines, we get a wider understanding of what thought is. It's not only the blah blah written in books that composes thought. Think, artists think, graphic designers think. And so I have developed in the last few years a curiosity as to see how those people, graphic designers, visual artists, have produced meaning, but in a different way. Okay. This is apropos visual art. So this is the cover of the new edition. And it is a work by an artist, a Lebanese artist, Samir Sayer, 2014. Samir Sayer's idea is, you know, al-Hurufiyya, the art school that focuses, that works with Arab letters. So his idea was to liberate letters from their semantic function and to transform them, to liberate them into forms and play with them. But here, this is a word. It reads hurriya, freedom. And it is inspired by the Arab revolts. So I wanted to have that on the cover and to sort of gesture to my move to an opening to the visual arts. The Arab revolts, as you know, very dramatic, followed by severe repression. All Arab countries are much worse now than when the revolt started. And we have experienced levels of violence and brutality unprecedented. Now, let me draw on some artists to illustrate that. This is by a Syrian sculptor, Asim al-Basha. This is a man looking at the skies watching out for the barrels that Bashar al-Assad was throwing on people's homes and villages and cities. This is the work of an Egyptian artist, Huda Lutfi. It reads, صوت الحرية انتبه, that the voice of freedom was silenced after the repression. And this is a work by Yusuf Abdelki, also depicting a repression, a Syrian painter. Now, after these upheavals, these unbelievably dramatic things that we lived since, that we have been going through since 2010, I wonder how contemporaneous is that contemporary thought? Are we contemporaries of this? I think not. And I try to sort of sketch what this new contemporary thought is. It's very difficult because little time has passed and because so much has happened that it's difficult for human minds to really sort of cope with what has been happening. Let me here try to make a comparison, a beginning of a sense of how intellectual themes might have changed. Before 2011, there was a lot of talk about identity, authenticity, tradition, modernity, all efforts at positioning ourselves with respect to Europe. Western thought, modernity. And as I mentioned earlier, much of it was made in a culturalist approach. It suited the governments very well, you know, keep on talking about authenticity, it's very good. Better than raise questions about corruption, about abuse of power, about failure in economic development, in failure on all fronts. Talk about cultural authenticity is very safe. I don't think anybody today worries about cultural authenticity. I think that freedom and dignity, democracy, are on the minds of people, although people are exhausted. And whether it's in Syria, in Iraq, everywhere else in the region, people are too tired, too eager to find food, electricity, safety, too traumatized. And remember, the first wave of revolts happened in 2011, and then this brutal repression came upon us. And then all of a sudden, nobody expected it, there was another wave of revolts in 2019 in Iraq and in Lebanon. So apparently revolts are unpredictable things, which also indicates that people still care about dignity and freedom and democracy and holding power accountable. But this divide for me raises an important question. If really all people were concerned with was modernity and tradition, how come they went on demonstrations against dictators, knowing that killing was going to be the answer? They didn't demonstrate for cultural authenticity, they demonstrated for dignity. So this makes me wonder, so the talk about authenticity, whose talk was it? Whose thought was it? This thought here, whose thought is it? And I think that as long as we don't have a social history, sociology of knowledge, and all of that, one has to be very careful to call something the contemporary Arab thought. However, it worked very well with the Minority Report, because all through, as cultural talk was very, very loud, you found people in the harshest dictatorships, like in Syria, who were saying, you know, our problem is elsewhere. The issue of freedom, of dignity, of how this corrupt dictatorship was really tearing society apart and destroying. There was a lot of talk about the destruction of the human. So here I see a connection between this kind of discourse and what people were expressing on the streets. And for me, this indicates that the Arab intellectual scene is a very varied one. You find different things in different milieus, in different times. After brutality, after 2011, I think there is much more concern with sense-making. As you know, after every experience of extreme violence, one wonders, how can you put the pieces together again? How can you write poetry, refashion life, recreate the human? And I think there is a lot of thinking and writing around this topic. Ethical reflection about, after what we've witnessed in terms of human brutality. Talk about solidarity. How do you recompose human society after what Iraq or Syria or Sudan or has been going through? A lot of concern with power as really a central theme in three directions, as I see it. It's the state building, how do you make democratic transition? And where I come from, the Doha Institute and the Arab Center have been doing a lot of work in that direction. Religion, the religious intolerance and violence that the region has experienced also opens the subject, imposes itself, and people do sit down and reflect on this phenomenon. And of course, gender. In all of the Arab revolts, gender issues were at the forefront. Women were there raising questions about personal law, about domestic workers, most of them women, about liberties, about passing on nationality, and so on. And I come to the last, you thought this was, you had seen the worst, and that now, you say 2011, you write history, you say 2011 after 1967 is the turning point, and there is something else happening. This is another artwork by Huda Lutfi, Eyes on Gaza. And here are my comments on the Gaza, and these are my last comments. Now, anybody who has been in the global south, as we call it, or outside the privileged Europe, outside Western power, knows that double standards rule. In other words, Sartre has a wonderful line. It's the opening line of his preface to The Wretched of the Earth. He says, I don't remember the exact figures now, he says, there are so many humans, say 500 million humans, and 1,500,000 natives. And I think that summarizes it very well, that you have two categories of humans in this world. The humans, and then, something else. To designate all human beings who live outside the power center. And we all know, the Arab world, we know that our lives do not count as the lives of others. Everybody knows in the global south that values are to be upheld for the rich and the powerful of this earth, but then really it's just lip service for the rest of us. So double standards is common knowledge to anybody who has been at the receiving end of the power policies of Western politics. Okay. So when Gaza happened, that the lives of Palestinians, of the lives of Arabs, do not count as much as the lives of Israelis is nothing new, nothing surprising, nothing shocking, in the sense of it's not new. And yet, there was something new. And my colleagues and I, for a long while, wondered what that new was. This was not the first war on Gaza. This was not the first war in the region. We had witnessed Iraq. We had witnessed Palestine for a very long time. So why is Gaza war shocking us? And what is the new in it? And believe me, it's not easy to pinpoint it. My guess, and the guess of some with whom I talk, is that there are three new elements. First of all, the time span. You know, it's not one strike or one massacre for a week, for 3 days, and then we move on. This is continuous, every day. And we in the region, at least, watch it, because this is our TV channels, our social media. Everybody has a relative who has a relative in Gaza, so it's news that circulate almost by the hour. So we are made to witness a live genocide. So I think the time factor is stunning, that it can go on for so long and the world sort of going with it. The second element is that the world is not only going with it, that the powerful of this earth are not only, just disregarding, are defending it, are justifying it. Now, this is 1 degree higher. This is new. That not only you let your people who think are like you, massacre and take away land and violate rights. No, in this case, you have public justification, encouragement. And the third element is that those who are participating in this justification are all kinds of institutional powers, not only governments, academic, media, actively justifying. And I think that what is new in this episode is that the repression is taking place inside European societies. That in French universities, in German universities, people would be condemned because they're carrying a flag or this did not happen earlier. So I think if you combine all of these elements, then it makes Gaza into a turning point. And the turning point, in my opinion, is really the collapse of universality. We knew that the discourse on universal values was a double standard, that the sacrality of human life applied to some but not to others. Well, we knew. This is common knowledge. But that some of these values are denied inside European societies, that is new. So you can't but help thinking, so these societies So they never took these values seriously in the first place? And I end with this reflection as far as I am concerned, or people with whom I live are concerned. European societies will discuss this. I don't know if they realize really what has happened. But as far as we are concerned, the burden that is upon us is to see what are we going to do with ourselves and with our ethical system after this collapse. I think this is the big point on our intellectual agenda. How are we going to think values after Gaza is the question for us in the Arab region. And I thank you for it. I wanted to end on a positive note. No wonder that I forgot it. This is by a Lebanese woman artist, Tagrid Darwood. She has a series on the Palestinian olive tree. And I wanted to end on this positive notes because something green and lush is there to be, that we wish to hold on. And
Muchas gracias, Elisabeth. Yo creo que ha sido impresionante. Hemos hecho un...
Thank you very much, Elisabeth. It was amazing. It's been amazing. We have taken a look at the Arab, contemporary Arab thinking and all of its dimensions and the things that she's put on the table, and you've opened floor to many areas that we can debate during the whole cycle of conferences. So thank you very much, Elisabeth. So we open the floor for Q&A, but I forgot to say one thing at the very beginning. Let me say that to all the students who participate in the seminar and who are here at Comunidad de Madrid, we've given you the passport, we've stamped it, but for those of you who follow us online, you can register, and in fact, if you do, you know, that shows that you were following the conference. We have a link in the YouTube channel for Casa Árabe that was streaming the conference. So if you are connected from your home on a remote location in our tuning program or with the Universidad de Córdoba or anyone, you can register and it will be taken into consideration for your certification afterwards. So without further ado, we're going to open for the Q&A.
Together or... Vale. ¿Quién se anima? Si no tenemos aquí también.
Who would like to break the ice? Please remember to use the microphone. I think we have someone at the back of the room.
Hola, sí.
Hello.
Or, yeah, I'm just wondering, where do you think people find a strength when they are so tired? And how do we, and I think it's not only about Arab people, but in general, how do we cling on to hope when people are just so tired?
¿Cogemos alguna otra pregunta?
Maybe we can take another question and afterwards they can answer.
So much. It was enlightening, your thoughts. I don't even know how to make this question, but I think the last part of your speech got me thinking a little bit about our researches and everything, and about like dividing the word Occident and our Orient and how we do the research regarding that. I find it very difficult sometimes to do my researches because I'm from Brazil, for example, and normally I do the researches on how Brazil deals with the Arabic word, but then it comes into a three-dimensional situation because Brazil is in the Occident, but we don't see ourselves within the global North. So my question to you is, how not to fall down with the thoughts or to import thoughts all the time regarding the global North for like saying like this, and I don't know how to create our own thoughts on this way, on how we see ourselves in the world and how we see the others. You know, which are the others to us? I don't know if you understood. Thank you.
How does this work? Does it work?
Yeah, I think that does work. Yes,
It's working?
Yeah.
Thank you. How do people find the strength to go on? That's the secret of the human species, I think. People are exhausted, people are profoundly traumatized, like in other parts of the world where such violence is, you don't come out of it, you don't really overcome it. It's bad. And thank you very much for problematizing these aggregate notions. I do not usually adopt them, and I think it's every time situational. It's the power structures, and it depends on your positionality, as we would say today, where you're speaking from, with what power structures. So where would Spain fall? Where, as you said, where would Brazil fall? And I think in every setting there are such complexities of power structures and hegemonic discourses. When one could, at best, I think, become aware of them, try to keep them in mind and speak from where you need to speak.
Is it working? Oh, okay. I was wondering if the fact that the values are not respected in even Europe anymore, if they ever were, isn't it more of a class problem, that it not respecting those values just benefits the 1%?
I didn't hear you.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. No, it's
Yes. Okay. If the fact that these values aren't even respected anymore, even in Europe, doesn't that have something to do with the class divide? That the 1% benefits more from not respecting anyone and anything?
Good question. I think values, we know that now from the history of philosophy, that also values have something to do with interests and benefits and privileges, so absolutely yes. But in extreme situations like ours, I think the question is so radical because the fall is so total that, yeah, one is bewildered as to how to reconstruct some ethical guideline to human life. And I was talking about, I didn't get to speak about the bitter enlightenment. You know, in the Enlightenment idea, Monsieur Kant says that to get enlightened, you have to get rid of the tutelage, and think for yourself. In our case, no matter how we were aware of the double standards, we thought that, well, you know, these Europeans are colonialists and all the possible crimes that go with it. But at least, look, they, you know, they built good countries, they have democracy. So somehow Europe kept its reference, if you want, or some credibility of holding up values. With the fall of this claim, as we witness it, we are left without tutelage. We can't even say that. And the challenge now for us is really to say, this is why I call it a bitter enlightenment. Where do we go from here? How do we rebuild an ethical life for us? What do we do with the very notion of value? I think universality will be the big theme. There's something wrong with the mic. Yeah, so I'm going to end with this, the centrality of universality. This is really big on the agenda now. How do we redefine, how do we re-understand universality? And what do we mean? Is it what applies to humans as humans? And I think more than universality, it seems to me that the very notion of humanity, because there is such a collapse of humanity, how do you reconstruct it?
Sí. Bueno.
There was a gentleman there who, we want to be gender fair.
Bueno, si queréis agrupamos, cógelo y luego pasamos allí.
Can you, does it work? Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much, shukran, for this amazing lecture. I'm Zahra Jabbar from Iraq. Working in Centro de Estudios Árabes Contemporáneos, CEARC. And I just want to reflect in what you were speaking about, and I want to say a little bit as a poetry, when walls are burnt and silence is watching, what does that say about our values that we claim to uphold in the Arab world and in Europe? So, as a reflection, I think we have lost our shared humanity. And you asked the question about what values should we hold, and my answer to this question is that perhaps we need more solidarity, more courage, and more dignity. Thank you.
De aquí, a este lado. Allí está. No, sí.
You were talking about the bitter enlightenment, and I wanted to ask if you think we can relate this to, as we see that the United Nations are unable to stop the genocide, or even if some European countries, like Spain, are acting in a way to try to stop it, and we can see that we cannot do anything. If you think this will make all the countries in the world to respect even less the United Nations and other international organizations, because they cannot even fulfill their fundamental role, which is to not to stop a genocide. Thank you.
Yes, but I think in addition to the impotence of the United Nations, there is also a lot of popular sympathy, and that sort of revives that sense of humanity. And there is a lot of public opinion support. So there is hope there. And I wanted to add something, because we're talking about Gaza and the structure of world politics. I don't want to be misunderstood that the crisis of value is only with respect to this chapter, and what Arabs or people in my part of the world did to each other is colossal in terms of violence and brutality. So the collapse of morality is also among us. So I don't want to give the impression that as if we are the good and they are the bad. These are really very somber times in which everyone has to sort of reflect on what values we uphold and what kind of community are we able at all to reinvent.
hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So first, thank you really for the lecture. It was really good. I was wondering how, as citizens, we can act against the genocide, because I feel that the protest and everything, it doesn't feel enough.
Can you please repeat that?
Okay, so I said, like, how, as citizens, we can act against what is going on in Gaza right now, because I feel that going in the street and protest doesn't feel enough.
¿Cogemos alguna otra pregunta? Y ya agrupamos con esto. Sí. La última oportunidad, ¿seguro? Vale, pues tenemos esto.
I hear that sense of frustration and of impotence. I think that expressing, at least if you're able to go out on the street and express solidarity, I think it sort of reinforces that compass, the moral compass, you know, to feel that there are other people too who sees this to be unacceptable is very important, even if you can't change politics. Perhaps in democratic societies one can make an effort or have that hope to force, to push for a certain change. Everything counts, I think. I think the worst is to not care and just let evil take its course.
Permitidme mencionar aquí, respondiendo también a esta pregunta.
Allow me to mention here how 2 years ago in November in 2023 we had Haifa
Here in the serious lecture. Paso otra vez al español para no liar a las
I switch again into Spanish instead in order not to confuse our interpreters, but we have Haifa Sangana, who is an Iraqian activist, and it was November 2023, it was 2 years ago, and some students were asking her what to do when feeling frustrated and hopeless, and what can we do apart from demonstrating, and she was talking about creative resistance. In our field, let's imagine the way that we can somehow have an impact or do our small piece of work to contribute to change, or at least to a critical reflection. And I just wanted to add that. Also, I wanted to mention that we have a colleague following us online, and he was also saying that thanks to your conference, now they have a idea of how Arab thoughts are very much alive with different art expressions that you've shown us. That exhaustion hadn't stopped creativity. So we see how Arab thoughts are Arab thinking still alive. So I don't know if you want to do a reflection about that. So we can end up with a positive note on your conference. I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that regard.
Yeah. Human beings are amazingly resilient. I mean, it's a species, otherwise it would have been, discontinued a long time ago. I don't know how life goes on and creativity goes on. In Beirut now, there is such an effervescence of cultural life that is incredible in the middle of ruin and war and, economic ruin and corruption and there is so much happening on the artistic scene that I don't know how. And of course, we Lebanese don't like this notion of resilience. People always tell us, all catastrophes happen and you still go on. People are tired of hearing this, and I think it does take a toll on people. People are traumatized, are very worried, are tired, wish to live in peace, do not normalize with this, but somehow every inch of energy left sprouts out. Don't ask me how.
Bueno, pues si parece con esto vamos.
Okay, so we will finish with this. So just some advertising, because related to this creative world and to the cover page of our author. She talks about how calligraphy tries to liberate letters. And we have a calligraphy exhibition that's going to open on Wednesday. You're invited at 7 p.m. There'll be a roundtable with the artists, and at 8 it will be open. We will open it. It'll be the premiere. You've seen that they are just finishing right now, so you're invited to come on Wednesday to the exhibition. And we also have the poem. And the professor is going to read a poem. In line with what Professor Elisabeth Suzanne Kassab has told us, I was trying to look on a mobile phone. It's not on, I wasn't on the social media. I was actually looking for a poem to conclude, linking this reading to everything that's to do with poetry. Is written by a woman from Gaza, this poem, killed by a missile on the 23rd of October 2023, 2 weeks after the genocide started. And she wrote it on the 16th of October. She was called Hiba Bunaba, and she died with her baby at home. I'm gonna try my best to read it in Arabic. And but so that at least we hear Arabic, and I'm really sorry if I say the words. I'm gonna try it, and then I'll read the translation into Spanish.
Hiba, justo una semana.
Says Hiba, 1 week before she died, killed by a missile.
في العالم نبني مدينة ثانية أطباء بلا مرضى ولا دماء أساتذة بلا ازدحام وصراحة للطالبة عائلات جديدة بلا آلام ولا حزن وصحفيون يصورون الجنة وشعراء يكتبون في الحب الأبدي كلهم من غزة كلهم وفي الجنة توجد غزة جديدة بلا حصار تتشكل الآن. Y esto dice algo así como.
It says something like, let me see if I can find the translation. It says something like, in the heights we're building a second city. Doctors without the ill or injured, teachers that do not have to teach in a full classroom, new families without pains, journalists that take pictures of paradise, poets that write about eternal love. They're all from Gaza, all of them. In paradise, there is a new Gaza with no blockage, a Gaza that is now taking shape. We don't want Gaza in the paradise. We want it in Western Mediterranean. Thank you very much, Suzanne.